Hey guys, you know the table saw is pretty much the heart and soul of the woodworking shop. We do so many different things with it. Batch cuts, rip cuts, miter cuts, we square panels with it. We do a lot of different things with it. But when it comes to ripping long 4x8 sheets of plywood and large panels by yourself, man, it is just not the best choice when you don't have an outfeed table or somebody to help you support the piece. And I don't know about you guys, but my wife is pretty much done helping me in the shop. So I'm going to share a jig with you that my dad taught me years ago. He certainly didn't invent the jig or the technique, but he taught it to me and how to use it. And I want to share it with you because I think you'll get some good out of it. So stick around. Okay, here's what you're going to need to build this long rip jig. You're going to need your circular saw, need a chalk line, a good sharp pencil, some number 10 wood screws depending on the thickness of your plywood, tape measure, always wear your ear protection and your eye protection, always. Phillips head drill bit, and then also a countersink drill bit. I've got each of those in two separate drills, so if you got one drill, that's fine. Alright, that's what you need, so let's do this. The first thing, guys, is to pick out a straight, square piece of plywood. You might think they're all that way, but they're not. I use 3/4 inch. You can use 1/2 inch if you like. I like the 3/4 because it's a little thicker and doesn't flop as much. The key point here is pick a good, straight, square factory edge to use as a reference point for this jig. It's going to be a fence on this jig. You'll find that edge and use that as a reference. Mark in 3.5 inches along that factory edge on each end, and then pop you a chalk line down through there, and then you're going to make a cut. Set your saw. Always unplug your saw before you make any adjustments, guys. Once you pop that line, make a freehand cut as straight as you can, smooth all the way down the length of that plywood. The factory edge of that side is going to be the fence for this jig. You'll have a 3.5 inch piece left over there, and then you're going to glue that to the big piece. That freehanded cut there is actually going to be cut away, and you'll see how that works in just a minute. Next thing you're going to do, guys, you're going to work on your saw again, so unplug your saw. You're going to measure from the outside of the base plate over to your blade. Roll back your blade guard and measure over. See, mine's 3.5 inches here, so yours may be different if yours is not the same kind of saw. Every saw is going to be different. So you take that measurement and then go to each end of that piece of plywood and find that mark. See, 3.5 inches here, and then I'm going to add a 1/2 inch to that, and then that's going to be where your mark is. Yours may be 5 plus a 1/2, so just add a 1/2 inch, make a mark at both ends, and then pop you a chalk line down through there. You're going to use this line as a reference for gluing when you glue the small cutoff piece, so pop you a chalk line. Oh wow, how about a little chalk? I use green Titebond 3 glue and a roller to apply my glue to the fence piece. And glue and clamp the cutoff piece to the large piece with that factory edge exactly on that chalk line, and glue that up and clamp it at both ends. Okay, after you glue that up, then you're going to drill countersink pilot holes, and then use your number 10 wood screws. I put them about every foot down through there, 2 of them you can see here, and I go on mine. I'm using 3/4 inch material, so I'm using 1.25 inch wood screws. If you use 1/2 inch, then you use 3/4 because you don't want that to push through. I put mine on top. I've seen guys do these before where they put them from the bottom, but I like mine on top, countersunk. Now you're going to actually use your saw to cut off that little 1/2 inch piece that we left. You're going to use the cutoff piece and that factory edge as a fence, and then you're going to run your saw down through there. Make sure your cord is free and clear where you're not going to get it hung up when you start this cut. So once you start this cut, you want it to be smooth and non-stop, but go slow and careful and make sure you get a smooth cut up and keep your saw up against that fence. Also, after you glue up, make sure you don't have any squeeze out in there that's going to hamper that saw from going down through there. You can see here that I made a 5-foot jig also that I use as a crosscut jig. I made an 8-footer and a 5-footer. Then I took a Forstner bit, 1.25 inches I think, and I made a hole in each of these to use as a means to hang them by. I used a French cleat hanger up in the corner of my shop. When I first hung them up, they didn't hang straight, so I made this little bracket to keep them over there straight up and down, perpendicular. The jigs work great. I love both of them. I use them a lot. Crosscut 5-footer and an 8-foot long rip. I think actually I can get truer and more square cuts with these jigs than I can trying to push a big 4x8 sheet of plywood through a table saw. Alrighty guys, let's assume we're going to cut this 4x8 sheet of plywood with our jig. Let me show you how I would do that. Okay, if you don't have an outfeed table or somebody to help you support the workpiece, then either set up some sawhorses, or in my case here I'm using my table saw. Get you some 2x4s, 2x6s, whatever, to elevate that piece of plywood up off the table saw, and then set your saw depth just a little bit beyond the thickness of whatever plywood you're using. I'd make a mark at each end. Let's say we're going to cut it 9 inches here in this case. I'd make a mark at 9 inches on one end, and then I'm actually going to go down to that other end there and make a mark as well. One thing you got to take into consideration here is the width of your saw blade, the kerf of your saw blade. So you either need to make that adjustment at the mark when you mark it, or when you place your jig. So take your jig, align it with your mark, and then you're going to clamp one end and then the other and get it exactly on that line so you can come out with the cut that you want. The little piece that we took off the jig that we ripped off of, that's the cut line now. That same place where the saw blade is lined up against that is going to be your cut line, so you can see the principle of how this works. So get it good and lined up on that end and then the other end as well. Snug up your clamps, and then you'll use that fence that you created. That edge there is the cut line, and of course the other piece up on top is the fence. And you'll use your saw. It's now designed exactly to go with your saw to the width of your saw blade, and you'll run that down through there nice and smooth. Be sure you keep your cord loose like we talked earlier, and use that fence and make a really smooth cut and rip that plywood. Set your saw blade depth to the depth of your material plus the thickness of the jig too. I'm not going to make this cut because I don't want to waste any more of this plywood, but anyway, this jig will work great for you. It's a lot safer than ripping on a table saw by yourself. I hope you got some good out of this. Like and subscribe please if you'd like. If you'd like a set of plans, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. God bless.